In this lesson, we're going to learn about the layout and print settings that are available to you within AutoCAD. Now, we mentioned in the beginning of the course that we have model space and we have layout space. Once you get to a point where you have pretty much completed your plans, your elevations, your sections, and you are ready to start printing out or preparing at least your layout for final presentation, you can now start working on the actual layout sheets. So what we're going to do is we're going to flip over to the first layout. This can be renamed to something. We can right click on it, and then the menu which is off your screen, you can just click on rename, and we can call this one ground plan. And then if you right click on it, the main settings are going to be within Page Setup Manager. Within that, you can modify that ground plan, and here you can basically choose your plot styles. So here we're going to use house plot style. That's the CTB file that we spoke about right at the beginning of the course. Here you can choose your plotter. I'm going to choose an Adobe PDF. And you can go across to your Adobe PDF settings, and you can just check that everything here is correct in terms of your sizing. Most of those properties, though, can be directly managed from the page setup. So we're going to choose our size of paper. And over here, you'll see that there are several types of sizes. We have oversized sizes, we have ARC, ANSI. Basically, I like to use the standard A4, A3, A2, A1 sizes. And if you have a spooling plotter, a proper large printer, then you can start looking at any oversizes if you do have that ream of paper in your plotter. So we're going to work with an A3 size, since that is quite a manageable print, and it is quite easy for presentation. So we're going to be laying it out one drawing per A3. The one thing that you want to have a look, though, is you want to see whether the drawings at the scale that you want do actually fit on your paper size, and that's what we're going to do in this lesson. The next thing, you want to make sure that your plot scale is at 1:1, and you want to make sure that your units are the same as the ones that you're working in. You can then choose whether you want portrait or landscape, and once you're ready with that, you can click on OK. So then you'll see within your paper space you have this layout. What you can do is you can double click on it, and that will enter into the model space within your layout. And if you double middle mouse button click, you will get a zoom extents of everything. So here, if I double click on the outside of it, I can manipulate the window, and if I double click on it, I can manipulate the information within it. That is basically the core functionality of this layout space. So at this point, you can start to enlarge this window if you do want to have one layout on the page. And we can start to zoom in and arrange how we want our layout to be. Now, there are a couple of things that we can do within this paper space functionality. We can start adding our title block, and if you like, this entire title block can be transferred into the paper space. Some people do like to create their entire layouts within the model space, and I am quite a fan of that because you do get a very clear idea of what the final layouts are going to be. So whichever way you decide to work, you can either type your multi-text or single line text within the paper space. That means that whatever you type here is not going to be visible within your actual drawing, which means that once I have a title here, I will now be able to go into my drawing and not see that text, which is only in the paper space. I think the text that I drew was a little bit too small, so I'm going to redo that just to show us an example. And I'm going to type ground floor, and I'm going to make this size slightly bigger. So the text is actually quite huge because you are now working at hundreds times the scale. So I'm going to make the text a size of 10, and you can clearly see that you can now start to lay out your layout space, your title bar, and all the rest. If you have a very informal presentation, you can do a simple layout where you have the name of the floor, you have the scale, you have the name of the project, perhaps a logo, perhaps your name. And if you are doing a more formal architectural presentation, you would want to get the entire sidebar or bottom bar where you start sharing information about all the people and the systems that are available within that plan. You'll generally see this on much more complex architectural drawings, where you will have several addresses, you will have the company name, you will basically have an entire title block that is quite complete, and those are generally derived from templates. So instead of worrying about how to create that, generally those are given by firms themselves once you are working within them. So the main thing that I want to cover in this lesson is just that you understand the difference between the items that you go and change within your model space and then the things that you can edit within your paper space. So what we're going to do is we're going to do most of the title blocking and all of that in Photoshop, since that is going to be a compartment of this course. If you weren't going to use Photoshop, you would want to add more detail to your plans in AutoCAD. So in our case, I'm going to delete all of this, and the main thing that I'm concerned with is to basically lay out my drawing and get the scale correct. And that's going to be the last thing of this lesson. I'm going to look at how I can get the scale to be exactly according to the 1:100 that we specified. So to do that, there are a couple of different ways. The simplest one that I like to use is just pressing Ctrl+1 with the border selected. That's the border that is your bordering window for your plans. When you have a look at that, you will see at the bottom you have a custom scale. You can also click on standard scale, and if 1:100 is available to you, you can choose that. So what I see immediately that the A3 size is a little bit small, so I need to update that to an A2, and I can modify that over here. So from A3 I'm going to go to A2, press OK, and then I'm going to enlarge. And if it is still too small, then I'm going to print at A1, and that may actually be the case. So in this case, we're going to have a full A1 presentation, and that is basically how quickly it is to re-update your paper size. Go into your print settings, double click, move it into place, and there you go. It's not necessary to have 100% of the site in the window, since you would generally want to have a site layout plan, which is going to be a completely separate plan, perhaps at 1:500, where you just show the outline of the roof and then you focus on the landscaping and some of the surrounding contours. So for our purposes, we are going to let this be our layout. And within this layout, you want to have your contours turned on, so you see what is happening over here. Those contours, though, I think should be a gray color, since they will be too dark on our drawing. So I'm going to go back into my model space, and I'm going to now select that entire contour layer, extract it, and just change all of that to by layer and by layer. So basically my contours are now following the layer settings. So you see the workflow is basically a flipping in between the paper space and the layout space, and you basically go and modify and prepare things like that. So that is pretty much it for this lesson. In the second lesson, I will have a look at how we can now do the other layouts, the second level, the upper floor, the section and the elevation, and then we're going to print out those PDFs, and then we're going to open them within Photoshop towards the end of this course.